Right. Great. Welcome to Tarot for Two. I'm your host, Tania Pryputniewicz, and my co-host, Mary Allen, is with me today. We co-blog at Tarot for Two. If you'd like to head over there and read our work about our cards of the month or ask us questions to address in future podcasts. So
Thanks, Tanya.
today's question is, what do we do with the bad cards? Mary.
Yes. And are there any bad cards? Well, this has been a question that has preoccupied me for a while about the tarot. And I don't even know where to begin. But one thing I want to say is that the cards vary from deck to deck. And what might be sort of a pleasant image in one deck for a particular card might be, a somewhat unpleasant image in another deck. And also, as Tanya, we were talking about before, it also depends on the interpretation of the given person, like what might look like kind of a negative image or a scary image, or have some interpretation that I don't like, to me feels completely different to you depending on what you bring to it. But I think unquestionably, in the decks that we use, which are the Thoth deck and the Rider-Waite deck, there are some cards that are not as happy as other cards.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you do a quick scan of the major arcana, then the Death card, the Devil, and the Tower are the three that stand out and come to mind. I was thinking, Mary, about what the cards show us when we come to them to read on any given day, whether there are happy cards or sad cards falling, or the opportunity for us is to get a chance to see how we're thinking or reacting at large at the time.
Yeah. And as I just want to insert, as you have said to me many times, the Death card isn't really about death. But when I see it, I still get scared that it's about death. And I have to say that some of the cards, and the Death card is one of them, are kind of scary to me because I think they are predicting something that's going to happen. And I know that that's just one way to read the cards, but as I have just been reading in a book about tarot called The Tarot, History, Mystery, and Lore by Cynthia Giles, the tarot, there's a long history of using the cards for divination, which means divining the soul of God through them. That's what divination means, to know the will of the gods. So when I see a card like Death or Five of Discs, which it can be associated with money problems, or the Tower or something coming down, I automatically go to this place of, uh-oh, the will of the gods know that this is going to happen, even though it's just a deck of cards. And they're scary to me in that way. And I've gotten some pretty negative cards and had nothing happen at all, not even knowing what they were really saying to me. Like Tanya and I were just talking about how years ago when we did cards, I got the 10 of Swords in every reading for about a month. Anyway, over to you, Tanya.
Yeah, I think that's so the Death card, if we come back to that too, and how if we look at the structure of the numbers, we start with 0, the Fool of the major arcana, the Soul arc, and it ends at the World or the Universe card, number 21. Death is kind of in the middle there, which if you look at that as sort of a metaphor for cycles, it comes as an opportunity for a shift or a change. So I think it is powerful, like you said, to remember that these cards can fall and they don't literally necessarily have to mean that someone is dying. Um,
Well, as you
or
say to me, it's not about death. It's and right? I mean, I don't think
yes,
the death
change.
card generally isn't even, in the books about the tarot, they usually don't say that it's really about someone dying.
Right.
It's
And
just
I think
kind
that's
of
our
scary.
sure, and that's a very human fear or reaction to that particular image. Um, so yeah, and I
Uh,
think people do come to the deck with maybe different perspectives. Like, am I coming to this reading? I personally use them very much in the moment for what's happening in the moment, like a snapshot of the day or a snapshot of what's on my mind at the time, which is very different than prophecy-driven readings or divine,
Divination,
yeah,
yeah.
divining, like you say. Yeah. But I do think it's also divining for ourselves, the part of ourselves that's divine and wants to feel in touch with something larger than ourselves and listening more deeply than we might in a in the
Well,
flow of a day.
yeah. And I guess one of the larger questions is why have those negative cards at all, and why do they have to be in there, and why can't we get a deck that doesn't have them? And I, I sort of come to the conclusion though that I have an ambivalent relationship with those negative cards because even though I don't necessarily like it sometimes when they come up in my readings, I would not want to use a tarot deck that did not have them because that's not really representative of life. Life is full of the whole spectrum of things. And um, even though I want the cards to only talk to me about happy things and only say nice things, um, nevertheless, I still value the fact that they don't always. And I do think that the less happy images work well. They work much better for me when I think in terms of this is representing a state of consciousness rather than this is something, a divination thing. Um, I'm not saying I look at the cards that way myself. I'm just saying I can't help but think that, some part of me thinks that, and that's what gets scared. And then I just go, okay, whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just like you're talking about the Ten of Swords falling, that same particular card fell during a really rough time in my life, and I was sharing with you, Mary, that that was very reassuring to me, actually. There's times when for me, I was in a very challenging time, and you look at this image of a man lying in the sand with 9 swords in his back, and there's one that didn't go through yet. So there's a little optimism there, right? But I remember feeling like, yes, this is how I feel right now, very pinned to the ground and flattened by life.
Yeah.
But but in a reading, we throw a grouping of cards. So there's a constellation of other images that I feel sort of bring more, uh, help me gain more insight on whatever the most difficult card in the reading is. I feel is tempered by the cards around it and tempered by what you'll say to me about what that card might be saying.
Yeah, I think it's in the talking about it. And I think, am I right in thinking that I've always been more sort of scared of the negative cards than you
Yeah.
have? Or have you caught it from me a little
I
over the
think,
years?
you know what, it's been a source of delight for me that we're different in this area. And I think I have a personality where I'm like, let's go get into that grit. And I'm not saying that you're not, but for example, I have this other blog, Feral Mom, Feral Writer. I love the opportunity to really get in there and dig into things. So the hard cards, while I not necessarily always love them, I'm like, okay, let's look at this. What is this talking about? And maybe I have a little less of the prophesying fear around it.
I think that's what it is. 'Cause I'm not the slightest bit afraid of digging into
Yeah,
hard things either, but
yeah.
I think it's that part of me that just won't shut up that thinks that this is a divination of some sort instead of just talking about what's really, what is inside me. I've also had experiences where I was feeling like my life was really going great, and I've laid out the cards and got a bunch of not very happy cards and gotten kind of mad. Say, why can't you
Right.
talk to me about positive things? Um, but you know, I think that's just part of it too, is we let ourselves have a relationship with the cards. And if I don't know what a certain reading is saying, then we put it back sometimes and try another reading. And sometimes you'll get similar or same cards, but in different permutations. And then you go, oh, that's what it's talking about. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I like to imagine that they're reminding me of things that I am not thinking about. And sometimes if I get a card and with a somewhat unhappy reading meaning, then if I look at it for a while, it'll come to me, oh yeah, there's that thing that I'm not really paying attention to right now.
Yeah. And I think that's an essential aspect of the work of working together on the cards for me too, is if there's a reading that is laid out that feels frightening or unhappy, or I agree with you in that aspect, that it's perfectly fine to put it back and start over. And I love that about you. And it's funny, when we throw the cards, sometimes I'll look at the reading, and then we check in with each other. Hey, how is this reading sitting with you? And we'll throw it again.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
another way to deal
There,
with the bad cards.
right. And there are some cards, even you would have to admit, Tanya, that you wouldn't want to get. Like the Three of Swords, for example, sometimes talks about, you know, unhappy relationship things or,
Yes, and
um,
it fell for me during an challenging relationship time, and again, it was accurate and specific, which
yeah,
which has led to my respect for the deck. I really have
yeah,
a lot of respect for what
yeah,
comes through.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I
absolutely.
get miffed too. Like, I get those sludgy cups cards. What are they, Mary?
The Seven of, um, let's see, I think you maybe get the Eight of
Yeah,
Cups,
cups.
and then I sometimes get the Seven of Cups, where there, you know, lots of
In the Thoth deck, they're
not,
sort of
yeah,
sludgy, not flowing cups, and yeah, it's very
yeah,
irritating because then I'm like, oh, what is that? How am I manifesting that card in my thoughts, or somehow thinking I'm stuck? That's what happens for me. I feel stuck when those cards fall. Like, oh, are you telling me
yeah,
that I'm
me
stuck
too.
in that place again? And I don't want to be stuck in that place again.
Right, yeah. And sometimes it's like someone tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hello, don't forget about that. Um, and it can be sort of kind of annoying, but again, life is like that too. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
life itself will put things in front of you to make you see these parts of yourself that really need to be healed or that you want to see. And um, what about, have you ever done a reading for somebody else and not quite known what to do with their cards because they are kind of cataclysmic? I had that experience once with somebody. Um,
What did you
have
do?
you ever had that?
How did you deal with it?
I think I kind of lied or I downplayed. I was like, I took one look at them and I thought, oh my goodness. And then I didn't, you know, I really soft pedaled it because I just had to.
Sure, because I
But
mean,
I want to, have you ever had that experience?
I think more so, like with individual cards in a reading, there's usually at least one or two where I can tell that we need to spend a little more time with those cards, and I'm always careful in my word choice to try to be as positive, give a positive expression of what the challenge is or the opportunity in the card. More than that, what I noticed is, like, reading during festivals, a certain card would show up throughout the day and everybody's reading.
Mm.
Like, there was a particular time when it was the Tower card over and over and over and over again.
Oh,
Um,
wow. That's really interesting.
yeah, which I
Oh,
thought was, oh, the
yeah.
universe is talking. The universe is talking. There's something that's happening universally for everyone right now that has to do with this card.
Uh, yeah, I have to say that my friend the other Tanya that we both know, and I threw the cards the day before 9/11, and we both got the Tower card, which
Yeah.
in retrospect we felt very spooked by.
Yeah.
Um, I do think in the majors too, the minor cards are a little bit easier to look at and just say, oh, this is a state of mind. And then the thought deck, they're really beautifully designed to capture, like sad energy or
Yeah.
whatever. But in the majors, um, when you look at something like the Tower, um, I don't know. For me, it usually feels like something larger than just my state of mind that particular day.
Yeah.
And um, so,
Yeah, I guess I think one of the things that I sort of uh, think about too in terms of explaining a reading ahead of time is talking about the minors as more having to do with daily interaction, and then the majors having to do with like a soul progression that's a little more might
yeah,
might be a little more removed from our understanding of what that is, but if it's framed in the terms of sort of our hero's journey of our soul throughout a life and that it's part of a wheel, it gives that idea that we're moving through these states constantly all the time. And it's we throw the cards and it's like a tiny snapshot, and
yeah,
throw them 5 minutes later or 10 minutes or an hour later or 24 hours later, we're different.
yeah. And I love thinking about the majors as having to do with soul progression. And even that, when you look at the Tower card, which is a picture of an eye and the tower come falling and flames coming out at the bottom, which is kind of hard to interpret that as anything but sort of cataclysmic. But if you think about soul progression, it can really be about one part of the soul coming to see something that it needs to see, and another part, some wall of denial or that you're living in coming down. Then it makes more sense. And
Yeah,
even in terms of the death card, it can be about something old in the soul, something old and unnecessary being put to rest, which I believe is the traditional reading of the death card anyway.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I've been reading this Journeying the 60s, a Counterculture Tarot by the William Cook Hagewood, and he talks a lot about oscillations, like the majors
mm.
as experiences we return to again and again, and death.
Oh,
Like
wow.
here he says, death comes well before the end, and everything, including doom, oscillates without permanence. And he says, we're in a constant search of the thousand joys that are unavailable without the consequent experience of 1,000 deaths. And just that idea alone of oscillations of energy, I
Mm.
think is really helpful, because then we're not pinned. It doesn't feel so heavy.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're
Well,
bouncing, returning, cycling.
yeah. Well, and just like you said, so one day you'll have one reading and another day you'll have another reading, and it's all sort of true at the same time. And um, I guess that's our next topic is it really all sort of true at all? I'd like to talk about that too.
Yeah, I like
Um,
that, Mary. That's a
what
great.
do we get from these cards, and why, and are they just images on a piece
Exactly.
of cardboard? But I think that'll be a fun thing to talk about next.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Tarot blessings on your week. We'll be back.
Yes, tarot blessings on your week. Thanks for listening.